Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Beyond the Screen. Welcome to our very first movie review edition of Beyond the Screen. We kind of did something similar last week, but this time we're going to be talking about one movie, not six. As always, I am your host, Ryan Gum. I'm joined by Jacob Holtzclaw. Jake, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. This is going to be like a pilot kind of deal for our movie reviews. We're not sure if we're going to do one every week. We're going to see how that fits into the schedule. But I know Ryan's a big movie review critic guy. He tried his hand at it once with his social media, and I think he's looking to get back into it. So we're going to see how this works, see if you guys like it, and what's our movie for today, Ryan?
Our movie today is Nosferatu. As hyped as we were this weekend to watch this movie, I like to say that it kind of lived up to expectations. We hyped it up on earlier this week. We had our episode, I should say. We were hyping up today's episode. So I hope that you guys are excited to listen to this. But yeah, I've had my eye on Nosferatu. I'm a big Robert Eggers guy. I like everything he comes out with. I think his stories are so well thought out. And if it's steeped in folklore like it usually is, you can tell there's a lot of research done. And Nosferatu is really no different. So yeah, today we're going to be reviewing Nosferatu. I'm excited to get back into it.
But before we get into that, the day that we watched Nosferatu, we also went over to Guitar Center to buy me a XLR microphone. And my first time being in a Guitar Center, I walk in and I'm already met with like people playing the drums, people on the guitar, and I feel out of place even as like the mediocre film nut that I am.
That imposter syndrome hit hard.
It was like, oh my gosh, dude, I don't know how to play a single instrument, and I'm walking in here, I'm looking for what little our worlds overlap. It's XLR cables, a microphone, and I already had a set of headphones, but it's kind of like, yep, where do I start? I have long hair, so I could fit in, but it was kind of like I'm lost, and I'm worried that if I ask somebody for help, I'm getting a bass guitar to the head.
Right. Like you walk in and you see all these talented people, and you're just like, I am not one of you.
Yep.
Immediately.
I do not belong here. But I was wearing my, I was wearing like an artsy fartsy shirt. Ryan was next to me wearing his band sweatshirt.
Yeah, my favorite band. So like we technically probably fit in more than we want to even admit. But
yeah, we looked the part, but if anybody talked to us, they'd be like, "What are you guys doing?
You fraud!"
Yeah.
Like they immediately be like, "Get out of my store."
So when we went up to get the microphone, the guy's like, "What are you going to be using it for?" You know, because he kind of gave me two choices, and I was like, "We're doing a podcast." And I mean, it's two white guys with glasses and beards coming up, and it's like, "Oh yeah, these guys are doing a podcast."
Staring straight at him, just.
Yeah,
podcast.
Yeah, with the default stance, arms at our sides, kind of like we're doing a podcast, and it's like every other dude in America.
That is probably the fifth time he's had that conversation.
Yeah,
that day.
Yeah, that day.
Yeah, that day.
By the same looking dudes.
Yeah,
yeah. But
weren't you just in here? Like,
yeah. So now the difference between us and those dudes is we have 6 other episodes under our belts,
right?
So
and a degree.
Maybe.
We don't know what they went to school for or not.
No. So, yeah, who knows what their podcast is about, but
I've never felt more like cringeworthy in my life than when we talked to multiple people, and we were looking at something else after we got the mic, and this guy walked up to us and goes, what are you looking for? Like, what are you going to use it for? And I didn't know what else to say other than we're content creators. And I felt so disgusted with myself immediately after.
Yeah.
like Jake made a good point after I said that. He goes, everyone in here is content creators.
Yeah.
Like,
I just felt like, oh man.
Not the Jake Paul kind. Not the Jake Paul kind.
No.
Like
we did not go to a forest.
Like, man, I just want to talk.
Yeah. So that is a little bit of the lore into this recording.
And then we turned around and watched a movie.
Like immediately left the Guitar Center.
Went across a road in the rain.
Yep.
Put Mike in my car. Went into movie theater. And now
we sit here. We're ready to review it.
Yeah. So if you know anything about Robert Eggers, as I said before, he likes to steep his films in deep folklore. And the thing is, we talked about like a lot, really, starting way back with George R.R. Martin 3 weeks ago, I think, talking about his crusade against changing source material when adapting different mediums. Robert Eggers is really good about keeping that source material. if he is going to adapt something, he's almost like a historian in a way. Like he goes really deep to find what is accurate and what is kind of like whimsical about something. So his last film was The Northman, a lot of Norse mythology and apparently a lot of correct Norse mythology. You look at some of the people who were credited in that film, they come from lineages that were a part of those mythologies. So, which is a unique way of doing things for him. So I think he's one of the most, the way that Robert Eggers tells stories, if you're not used to him, if you don't know, why are you watching Nosferatu first? Because there's a lot of movies before that that I think would get you not as aggressively into his style as Nosferatu. But yeah, with this one, he really sticks true to the original 1922 story, which is interesting because that one was also that movie that birthed the Chronicles of Count Orlok, and who is also Nosferatu, was also written by Bram Stoker, who was the guy who wrote Dracula. So it's interesting to see these parallels in this vampiric lore really stay true to the character. The overall goal of this movie, as Robert Eggers has painted a lot, was to put fear back in vampiric folklore. As you know, Jake, in the last, I'd say, 20 years, vampires and vampirism and whatever you want to call it, the folklore and the stories behind them have become more sexual almost. They've become more like, yeah, like they look pretty and, you know, they're just lost souls who want to find love and blah, 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 you know. And so according to Eggers, the idea behind this was to try to bring that back and try to say, hey, no, that's not where the story was originally going in terms of like what vampires were. And when people specifically believed in them, that is nowhere near how it was originally told, which I found very interesting. The film stars, oh, sorry, go ahead.
We'll see when you guys watch it, or you'll listen further into this podcast when we start tearing it apart and little spoilers, you know, and you guys can choose whether or not you want to listen to that. But he doesn't look like the Nosferatu that at least I expected. But,
no, well, he looks like a corpse.
Yes.
Like he looks genuinely like a corpse, which, spoiler alert, moving forward, we'll give you a specific point when to say, hey, really, you need to stop. We'll get to that point. But as of right now, we're going to go ahead and leave that out there. Say, hey, there will be spoilers, but we will give you a specific point to say, okay, like this is the most spoiler free we can get before we move into it. So that will be coming, but just putting that out there right now. So the cast of this film is Lily Rose Depp, Nicholas Hoult, Bill Skarsgård, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Willem Dafoe, Emma Corrin, Ralph Ineson, and so many more. This film is just, the cast is stacked. And really, the film is about, and again, trying to be as friendly to spoilers as possible. This film is not even a week old yet, or maybe a week old when this was released. The film is about Count Orlok and his obsession with, what's her name? Ellen Hutter, who is Lily Rose Depp. Now, you see as Nicholas Hoult, who his character, who is Thomas Hutter, he is a real estate agent. Essentially, he's sent on a mission to sell this land in his city. He's sent across country, right? Like, so to a different country. To sell the land to Count Orlok, who is asking for this, right?
And this takes place in 1823.
Yes.
So cross country is crazy.
6 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah. So as he is gone, it is revealed that there is a plot that Count Orlok has been trying to enact for years and years to get to who is Thomas Hutter, again, Nicholas Hoult, his wife, Ellen. So that's really the gist of the non-spoilers. So throughout the film, you get this, what can this vampire not do? He's seen as more than a vampire, which is, I'd be interested to see what the original folklore is like. Are vampiric figures seen as more demonic, like depicted? I would want to say so with how Eggers is to source material and how he is to folklore. But it was really interesting to see just the breadth of the power that this being had.
Yeah, his powers, and I won't spoil it too far, but it was more demonic in nature in terms of, I'm not someone who avidly watches horror movies, but it was not so much as I can turn into a bat. Regular vampiric level powers and also weaknesses. It was more demonic in nature. And even Dad had, when I told him I was going to go see this movie, he was explaining to my mom kind of what it was. And he said, even himself, who he might have seen the original, where it is more of a demonic telling of a vampire story, where it is more of a possession level thing.
A lot of religious ideologies, like you said, possession, there is like, so the idea of Dracula and the idea of vampires, like they have strong suggestibility to the point to where they could, I guess you could call it possession, but it's less like, I think of like, this is going to be such a strange way to transition this, but Hotel Transylvania, like when Dracula wants one of the characters to do something, he looks them in the eye and he just says, do it. And they do it, right? Less possession, but more strong suggestibility, almost like like the Force power by Obi-Wan. You will do this for the weak-minded. That is not the case at all. Count Orlok can possess you. He
Yeah.
can make you stay asleep if he wanted to. He can make you feel things that you don't want to feel, give you dreams you don't want, cast a shadow the size of a continent. Like crazy, crazy ability.
Yeah, and rat hordes. If that doesn't spoil anything, if you don't like rats, probably not the movie for you. That's about the only spoiler I'm going to give away during this portion.
Yeah, I think this is probably the point where we start getting into the actual story. I know that we've not had a lot of non-spoilers, but like really that's it. The story is about Ellen Hutter and her battle against the demonic vampire that is Count Orlok. He's freaky. He's very
Yeah.
scary. That's played Bill Skarsgård, if you can imagine. He is most definitely cast as
Yeah.
Count Orlok, or I'm just going to call him Nosferatu from now on.
I would say that this is just me giving it an immediate review, one sentence. This is not a horror movie to begin watching horror movies with. To
No.
me, someone who doesn't watch horror movies ever, I would not start with Nosferatu.
No, because well, at the end of the day, like this movie is very smart and there's a lot going on. It felt more like I watched a 3-act play than I did a movie. So if you're going to go watch, like, this is a good horror movie, but it's not a good horror movie, if that makes sense. Like it's a good movie in general that happens to be in the genre, but it might not be the best representation of the genre.
Yeah. What I generally liked, I have friends who are super into horror movies. Is I'd start out with like the funny slashers from like the 80s. I'd start with like Chucky and like Scream and then
Mhm.
those. And if you enjoy the somewhat jump scary slashers that you can make fun of, then you can work your way into more serious ones.
Yeah.
But I don't think Nosferatu is the one you should immediately start out with, because it's more, I guess artsy would be a very
Very.
vague generalization of this. And then Robert Eggers, as Ryan alluded to earlier, is not the first film you should watch if you're looking to get into Eggers either.
No. And so in this film too, as I had said before, it is almost a shot for shot remake of the original, just expanded upon ideas like we had talked about on our way back from the theater. Was I didn't really necessarily believe that Eggers was going to be able to make every scene count. What I mean by that is that like the original Nosferatu is not super long. This film is 2 hours. So how is Eggers, who is super, as we said before, super true to material, how is he going to expand upon things and make every scene feel like it's useful without wasting time? And he didn't. He did a masterful job. So with that being said, again, here's your final warning. We're about to get into the story from beginning to end. Jake's going to help me out here because I'm not going to remember every little detail, but we're going to get through this thing. So see you back later if you've not seen the film and want to see it before we talk. If not, you're okay with spoilers. Here we go. So the film starts, you see Lily Rose Depp and her Ellen as she wakes up. It's a completely black screen, and you see her show up. She's got kind of this mid cut of shadow, like a split face shadow going on, and she is praying. She is essentially saying like, please, like something, give me comfort, is essentially the gist of what she's saying.
She's basically lonely, I guess. So nobody. It's alluded to later in the film that she is one of those more sensitive beings to, I guess, possession or influence by demonic spirits,
More
or
in
spirits
touch.
in general, more in touch with spirits. And so she's back in 1800s. That's
Big deal.
generally frowned upon.
Yeah.
And so she is, I guess, quite lonely, and that's kind of the story behind her as to how this started. And so she's
Yeah.
praying for companionship, and who
Yeah.
answers but Nosferatu. So
Which it's interesting too, because where the story starts, apparently there had been many years before that, even where she had been doing this, where she had been like, her father as a little girl would find her again later in the story. She depicts her father would find her in the woods. She just would get up. She would have these epileptic fits. She would sleepwalk and talk to people, and her dad would find her and bring her back. And so while like that is where she's more in touch, is what that's describing. But during this particular scene at the very beginning, the first thing you see, she is again as Jake describes. Ellen is sitting there going, please, just companionship. I'm so lonely. She described how lonely of an existence she had. And she said, to any angels, to any spirits who hear my call, just answer. And Nosferatu heard her, and that woke him up. He says later in the film again, Nosferatu's like, you called for me. I'm here because of you. I woke up for you. So
and that's like a curse. She placed a curse on herself by asking for it.
Completely not, like accidental. but
Yeah.
her being in touch with that side, or her being, I guess you could call it like sort of psychic almost.
Hmm.
She woke this demonic figure up, and he says something to the effect of like, "You're mine now," or
Yeah.
like
Like
we,
they are to be married, or
yeah.
to
So
be one in flesh.
she
Yeah.
walks out, like she sleepwalks, I guess you could say, or like is more possessed. She walks out into her garden, and the it's such a cheap shot because it's so early in the film, but she starts having what looks like a seizure in her fit, and we hear the first of what will be too many moans from Lily Rose Depp. Well, that's, if I have one critique, she gets way too into her possession too many times. I think,
It's quite sexual every time.
yeah, which is, I guess that's like the point of the
Yeah,
possession
he
after her for that reason.
is pure evil, and so that means every portion of as
Evil,
evil can be, so it's not
including
only
sex.
death, it is, the perversion as well.
Yeah. And so the reason I'm saying it's a cheap shot is because as she's lying there on her back doing the thing, like in a possession, you hear Count Orlok speaking to her. She looks up, and you get the first jump scare of the film. This isn't even 3 minutes in. Nosferatu screams at her. She screams back. Cut to rest of film. Like it just says years later is what it
Yeah.
says.
Not even a number. It's
No.
just years.
Yeah, years later.
I look over at Ryan when that happened. I was like, how many years?
Like,
Because I don't know, you're used to seeing the number, but years later just means meh. I
yeah,
don't know,
like
when.
some time has passed.
Yeah, and then we eventually see like 1823 Germany or
Yeah.
something like that.
So an unknown, like an unnamed number of years before 1823, she had been having these problems, and she awoke the Count himself, and apparently had these problems for many years following that, until she meets Nicholas Holt's character Thomas. Now, as we're going to keep jumping back and forth, like to describe things as they happen rather than in chronological order, because you can watch the movie for that. So when she met and fell in love with Thomas, apparently the fit stopped. So at some point between when she first encountered Nosferatu and when we get to present day, she had a cease in her affliction, as they call it, in her melancholy, as they depict it.
In 1823, it's melancholy because it's kind of
Right.
Forbidden talk to be talking about crazy and mad
Or depressed even.
Yeah, being depressed is big no.
You're either ill or the devil is in you.
Yeah.
So she, falls in love with Thomas. They get married at some point, and Thomas, as I said before, he's a real estate agent. So when she is like the present day occurs, she's beginning to have her nightmares again. So it's a little bit convoluted because they go back and forth to be like, oh yeah, here's her having the initial. Oh, here she's having them again. But then they go back later and say she stopped having them and she's having them now.
Well, it is. I don't know if this is the first one, but it is the day of Thomas is going out, is sent on that 6-week mission to the castle.
Right.
And so maybe if that's the first time, I'm not sure if she had mentioned it happened before, but that could have been the first time.
Well, they talk about how they went to the doctor and how
Okay.
like that was her past, and so it seems like it did stop and that she's having them again more recently. So as Jake had just described, Nicholas Holt's character, I'm going to just call him Thomas from now on. Thomas is late for something. He's he's the honeymoon wasn't long enough. Lily Rose Depp's kissing on him, and she, as he leaves, he rushes out the door. She turns almost possessed like and says he's already gotten the position. He's going to be sent away.
So he's gotten a promotion, but to solidify the promotion, has to go to this castle and meet a count.
Yes, because this unnamed count who comes from old blood, who comes from a long royal line, has one air quotes 1 foot in the grave, which is a pun that we don't know about yet, is trying to buy land within their town. But this guy who he's moving from is a couple countries away. So as Jake describes, it's a 6-week journey. So we see as he goes into this office in I'm just going to call it his agency because I don't know the proper term for what it was back then. And real estate agent is like a really loose term for what he actually was. But he goes to his agency and his boss is like, you're late, but whatever. You're fine. You're going to get the promotion. All you have to do is sell this plot of land to this count who's asking for this plot of land specifically. And it's this old, decrepit, rundown castle that no one has lived in decades in their town that kind of overlooks the town at that. So Nicholas Holt is like, are you sure?
That's odd.
Yeah, can he not just come here?
Yeah.
And, he's like, I don't want to leave my wife, who I just got married to. And his boss was a little creepy as well. He's like, your wife is so beautiful, and says it all weird like. So, like, a lot of foreshadowing there.
And then is it not immediately after that we see him prancing around I'm not going to say a satanic star, but like
A pentagram of
a
some sort.
pentagram,
Yeah.
and he's acting somewhat possessed like or servant
Erratic.
like, erratic, and cutting himself and drawing other
With his own blood.
yeah. So
After he sends
after
Thomas
he
away.
sends him off, so
Yes.
we're already like, all right, this guy just sent him off, and he's obviously not in his best health or in Thomas's best interest. So let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
Um,
So right after he gets the note, like, hey, like, you're leaving, he goes back to Lily Rose Depp and he's like, hey, this is happening. And she, as we said before, she already knew.
Yeah.
So she's begging him to stay and she's having a fit, as she describes it later. She's having an episode, once again, how they're describing it, not me. And he's like, I need the job. I need it. Like,
for a house, for our
what's
lives.
sad about it is she's like, I don't want it. Like, I don't want the house. I don't want the money. Like, I just want you, which you learn later is because she had been fighting this demonic presence for her attention for a long time, and the only time it stopped was with Thomas. So she's begging him to stay. He doesn't know this. So I don't know if you can call him greedy, but he's very much chasing the bag,
Yeah, and he's searching for the better life
for
I
his
guess,
wife.
For
You
both
want
of
to
them, of
say it's
course.
for the opportunity for his family,
Yes.
but he doesn't know what we know now and what she does. So like he's like, okay, I'm gonna do it anyway. So he drops his wife off because he doesn't want to leave her alone. Maybe because he knows that she's had like these bad dreams again. She describes right before he drops her off at, is that his cousin? It's Aaron Taylor Johnson's character. His name is Frederick Harding, and I don't know. They didn't say why. I guess it's his friend.
Something like that. Well, his wife and
Anna.
And
Emma Corrin.
Thomas's wife are both friends too. So
Yeah.
I guess they're all just friends. But
He's very wealthy.
long story short, walking it through, he goes to the castle, he meets the Count. It's very unpleasant, very uncomfortable meeting, and he cuts himself on the thumb with a knife, and the Count gets a little weird by that.
His eyes dilate.
Yep, and then
Be careful what you do. He bellows in his Germanic tone.
We only ever see him like at night, and so that kind of and he was told that he's going to go meet a guy named Orlok anyway. So if you know the previous Nosferatu, you were like, okay, he's going to go see the guy, and then he signs a contract in a foreign language, which to the listeners at home, don't do that.
Yeah, no,
Don't
yeah. If
listen.
you can't read the contract, don't sign it.
Right, big mistake by
I
him.
do want to back up just a little bit
Okay.
because there's just a few important details. So he leaves his wife, I should say, with Aaron Taylor Johnson and Emma Corrin, whose names Frederick and Anna, and their family. So Anna is pregnant. So he goes immediately. He leaves on a 6-week journey. He shows up to this little like village, and they call themselves gypsies. So they're there, and he starts to have bad dreams when he's close to this castle. Before he meets Orlok, and he witnesses the death of a vampire. Like that night after he gets to this castle, or gets to this inn in this village just down below the castle, they're like, don't go. They're telling him, do not go, which is the first time I've gotten mad at this character, because these foreign language speaking like religious figures in this small town just below this place you're supposed to be are like, hey, he's the devil, don't do it. And he's like, I don't care. And then that night he witnesses a man get stabbed to death, or at least he doesn't know it's a man. He thinks it's a corpse. But when it becomes night after he gets to this village, he follows the quote unquote gypsies as they're doing a ritual to a cemetery where they unearth a coffin and they stab it in the chest. And when they do that, blood shoots out of the thing's mouth. And then he wakes up. And when he looks down, his shoes are covered in mud. So anyway, he gets up that day. The town that he was just in that was buzzing with people is abandoned. Snow's on the ground. That was not the night before. And as he's walking, because his horse is now gone, as he's walking to the castle just before, as Jake described, he meets Orlok. The sun goes away. It's covered by trees. It looks the shot is just beautiful. I mean, leading lines, if you know what that is, with the road and the trees overhead. Nick Holt is just a shadow in the middle of the road as a ghostly horse and carriage bellows towards him. He doesn't move. He just puts his hand over his eyes and is like, ah! And then the horse, when he looks back, the carriage is just now sideways and the door opens on its own.
So the carriage starts out like super far away.
Straight at it.
It is painfully long to the point where it's like, all right, man, time to get out of the way.
Yeah. He's just staring.
He's just staring at it for
Just
the longest
arms down,
time.
just posing.
And it was so odd that like when it finally gets there, it all the way up music, the score rises, he's scared, and then it just blank, and then the carriage is actually turned
The opposite
45
way, yeah.
degrees, and the door opens by itself.
And then he just gets in.
And he gets in it, but it's not like he just walks straight to. He walks for a little bit, and then he starts like
Levitating.
and just moving at a single speed, no footsteps
So
into it, and
the
then
idea-
into a transition because he gets so close to the camera, it goes black, and then it's a fade out, fade in from black to the next scene.
So I think the idea is that like he at first was deciding to go towards it, and then he lost the will to choose. But even then, I was like, why are you not running away when you first see the carriage, and then when the door opens by itself, dog, like, get out of there, man. But anyway, regardless, power of suggestion, possession, or whatever you want to call it, he ends up in the hands of Count Orlok. And yeah, he signs a contract without reading it. He cuts his finger open, and Orlok, which, by the way, if you know what Nosferatu originally looks like and what Bill Skarsgård take on it looks like, or I should say Robert Eggers take, they do not look the same.
No. So originally, I mean, I'm going in thinking about the SpongeBob episode where he's flicking the light switch on and off.
Yeah.
I'm expecting this bald, long-eared, long-fingered, which, I mean, he's got long fingers and nails
Nasty
in this
nails,
movie.
yeah.
But I just expect a scarier version of that.
He looks Germanic. He's
But
got this
now,
long stash.
well, not Germanic. He's more, I guess, Russian type.
I
Like,
guess
so
that's true.
he's looking more like Rasputin. Actually, he's got this
Oh, that's a
big
good point.
mustache. He's got the fur hat and the big bear coat. Like it's like his coat looks like it's made out of a bear. And so I was not expecting it. And he's corpse-like. He is actually actively rotting.
Yeah.
And so it's a much more grotesque. The mustache does not help. I mean, it is untrimmed, goes below his lips, like nasty mustache, which makes it even worse. You know,
He's actually
later on.
scary.
Yeah. So I don't want to meet this guy.
No. So, long story short, Nicholas Holt starts getting feasted upon, but obviously Orlok doesn't want to kill him because he wants to get to his wife. And Holt's character starts learning about this, starts realizing this. So right before he left, Lily Rose Depp gave him a locket with his piece of hair in it, which I think was more suggestive from the vampire, less so what she gave it to him for, or at least claimed to give it to him for, which was like a keepsake to keep you protected and remember me or whatever. So Count Orlok steals that and uses that as further, I guess, suggestibility, like strengthen his possession of her, because he doesn't let go. He holds on to it. But anyway, Nicholas Holt's like, I gotta get out of here, because he as he stays there longer, he realizes, one, Orlok is making excuses to keep him there, and two, he starts finding bite marks all over his body, which is another interesting point, is that vampires cannot, or canonically, eat from the neck. This dude's eating from the chest.
Straight from the heart. Like
Yeah.
he is going through the
Nasty gulps
left
too.
boob.
Oh, nasty.
yeah.
Dude, I mean, it hits a certain point where it's like, this is disgusting and terrifying. Like, it's very well done. But so like Nick Holt starts finding these bite marks all over his body, and he starts, obviously he's getting eaten alive. And so he tries to run out after all this is said and done. He's already signed the contract. He's already gotten his bag of gold, I guess, his little tiny little morsel of money. He starts trying to run out, and he stumbles upon the Count's tomb, his coffin. And he tries to stab him, and this is probably one of the best scares in the entire movie, even though you kind of saw it coming. So he takes an axe that was sitting beside the coffin. He pushes the coffin open because he's freaked out, and he saw what happened before the night, I guess a couple nights before now, when the, once again, quote unquote, gypsies stabbed that other corpse. He tries to stab Orlok, and Orlok stops him and wakes up. And he can conjure up like these demon dogs to chase him. And long story short, Orlok captures Nick Holt and starts eating him again, only for Holt to jump out a window the next morning.
Yeah.
And we think he's dead.
And he actually falls into the river below the
Yeah.
castle.
There is a river below, and he's trying to escape the dogs. And he jumps out and he crashes into the water below. He is found later by, I don't even know who they were.
The nuns of some
Well,
town.
that old lady. So there was an old lady at the original tavern before he goes into the castle that I think was also the same old lady that was being translated. Like, these two nuns were standing next to each other, and they're trying to save him. And essentially what the old lady says, what she's translated to say is, hey, the devil saved your soul for whatever reason. And if you're in this church, he can't get to you. Like, you're in his shadow. And they're talking about Nosferatu. Like, you're in Nosferatu's shadow. If you're here, you can stay healthy. You're protected. Don't go. And Nick Holt's like, but my wife. But my wife.
My wife.
But my wife. So as all that's happening, things are starting to get kind of spooky at the Harding house. Ellen, or Lily Rose Depp, starts having more seizures. She starts getting in like really bad shape. She starts having like more fits, as they call it. She's having more nightmares, walking around in her sleep, or at least that they claim. They called Ralph Ineson, who plays Dr. What's his last name? Severs, who is like the city, their town doctor. And he shows up and he's like, yeah, she's just too much blood, as they say. She's got problems. We will chloroform her and put her to sleep, and you'll tie her up and she'll get over it. Does not work. Things start to get a lot more like just out of control. So eventually, taking Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, Friedrich, I think is his name.
Harding. Yeah.
Yeah, Harding. I'm just going to call him Harding. He takes Harding and he says, my professor, who is a world-renowned like instructor at this, or former instructor at this college, he's in town, but the catch is he got obsessed with the occult and essentially what would be now known as the paranormal. They said alchemy and the occult is what they described it as, but present day known as paranormal. And he got ousted because they called him crazy. But he's in town, and I think he can help us out. So Harding and Ralph Ineson's Severs go up to Willem Dafoe is who we run into, and he's got a heck of a name. His name is, let me find it here, Here it is. Professor Alban Eberhard von Franz. And we'll call him von Franz for now, or just Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
Dafoe is very quick to say, look, untie the girl, leave her alone. She needs to have a clear mind. Let her have her seizures, which is actually, I thought, was one of the funniest things ever.
He's like, I don't want her on anything. I want her to roam freely.
I need her to talk to me.
Yes.
And so he shows up, and it turns out he's very quick to say, this is the work of a demon.
Yeah.
And no one believes him. And
well, of course not.
Jake, you made a great point, and I'd love for you to kind of describe your thought process. He never wavered from his conviction. Never at any point did he change his mind on what was going on with Lily Rose Depp.
No, yeah, he's a very, very strong guy, and he's I forget there's a storytelling process, but he is like the scientist in that, and for the lack of a better word, the scientist that you look to for sort of guidance. So he has to be that pillar of support. And so, but he doesn't change his mind. He's like, this is the work of demons. This is not her ailments. This is not her just being crazy. There is something far more evil and sinister afoot. And that is to be taken as truth from the audience, whether or not the characters do. Listen to Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, and I think the best part of the whole movie, because, we're sitting beside each other and I'm turning and looking at him for some reactions at some points of the film that are specifically bad in my mind. And the worst reaction I saw out of Jake, and I know it was out of me too, was they start bloodletting. And like it's a point to where they pick up Lily Rose Depp's hand and they just start cutting in the center of her like wrist. It is the most disgusting.
No, they stuck a needle straight through, like if
so
right
gross.
where your wrist is. Imagine I'll say a 6-inch needle straight through it.
I look over at Jake.
Laterally.
He puts his hands on his face, and I'm sitting there. I have a thing against like body fluid. I find that really body fluid's disgusting. So blood in particular, like gross to me. So the second they mentioned it right before they did it, because they asked, did you bloodlet? And the doctor's like, of course. And I thought, well, we're going to see that. Talk about Chekhov's gun, like Chekhov's blood. Like, I know this is happening. Yeah. So the second they raised her hand, I immediately turned to Jake because I'm like, I don't want to see this. And I
didn't know what bloodletting was.
I see Jake go, oh, like.
Yeah. Well, I thought they were just going to like scratch her a little bit.
No,
but no, this was not a scratch. This was not a cut.
Woo.
Straight through the wrist.
It
like you saw it through the backside.
It was so gross, man. Like it was disgusting. And so anyway, all that to say, they're doing medieval doctoring on her to try to figure out what is happening to this poor woman. Even if so what's cool too is like you said, the scientist, you have Severson, who is like, or Seaver, whatever his name is, Severs, who is like more science based. You have the non-believer in Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's like, this woman's just crazy. And then you have Willem Dafoe, who is the believer in the paranormal. And you see them all trying to work together because at the end of the day, at least Dafoe and Dr. Severson, who is Ralph Ineson, they both know something's wrong. And they respect each other. So despite opposite beliefs, they're working together, which is cool to see. Like that's another person who stayed true to his conviction, even if his opinion might have changed. Ineson saying, you know what, I don't know if I believe all that nonsense, but you are the person who taught me. You are more than qualified, and I trust your opinion.
That is, I just remembered what it is. So it's you've got the main character, you've got the sword that they use to vanquish dragon. They've got, and then the guide. And so you main character, sword, guide, dragon, success. That's generally what movies and generally stories are based on. You've got the main character, the means to win, the guide to help them get there, Karate Kid style, and then the dragon, the conflict to overcome. And so Defoe remains that pillar
The
as the
entire time.
guide the whole time.
Never does he steer them wrong.
Nope. And I mean, he's a little crazy. He can be Defoe like, you know,
The scene at
reminded
the
me
end
of-
when he's standing in front of the flames, spreading
Yeah.
his arms out, laughing.
So he's not mad in the sense of 1823 insane asylum, but he's a little crazy when it
But
comes to
smart.
that. But like, yeah, so it's lighthouse level Defoe.
Yeah, which is perfect Defoe. That's what you
Yes,
want.
You want Defoe to be like a little crazy old man but he knows best.
Again, Defoe steals the show at every turn.
Yes.
He is awesome. So as this is happening, one, the doctor, remember Severs that we're talking about, Ralph Ineson? Well, if you remember at the very beginning, the guy that sent Nick Holt on his journey, the real estate Mongol who ran the place, remember we said he was having some sort of ritual where he was standing in the middle of the pentagram naked or whatever, and he was doing his stuff with the blood writing? Well, it turns out he was contacted by Orlok before to orchestrate that, if you couldn't pick that up already. And he has essentially said, I am your servant. Like, you are now my lord type. I am going to give my life to you. It doesn't matter. He starts biting the heads off of birds, like really nasty stuff, just worshiping this, what he will dub as a god, but a vampire, demonic figure. So he gets arrested because he starts going crazy. He starts killing sheep with his bare hands.
And eating them raw.
Yeah, eating them raw. So he gets sent to essentially the hospital, but back in the day, hospitals and prisons were not that far apart.
No.
And so Severson is even like, why did you throw this guy in a prison? We don't do that. We're modern for 1823, whatever that means. And the guy's like, he killed sheep and was eating them with his bare hands. And immediately Ralph Ineson was like, oh. It's like, take me
justified.
there. Yeah, take me there. Yeah. Good job, sir. And so they go down, and he's spewing off nonsense, of writing on walls and spewing nonsense about Orlok and whatever. So that is still happening. Keep that in mind. That if for no other reason, this whole thing was orchestrated from the start from Orlok. The second that Orlok was called upon, this whole thing was orchestrated in a way. And something that's interesting too, as we get into moving forward, you got to think too that Nick Holt and Orlok, they are the opposite sides of the same coin. They're both trying to get to the end, or be on the receiving end of Lily Rose Depp's love. One, Depp loves Thomas, Nick Holt, but can she overpower the demonic side or the demonic influence from Orlok, even if she knows it's for the greater good to just give in, which we'll talk about later. So anyway, as all this is happening, Nick Holt escapes the nuns that he was with, the people that were saving him, and were like, if you stay here. He leaves, and he's still super sick. And they even say, you're not healthy enough yet, but he escapes on horseback. And as he gets back to Lily Rose Depp, as Willem Dafoe and Ralph Ineson and Aaron Taylor Johnson, for that matter, are trying to figure out what's going on, they're starting to uncover some clues. They're starting to do their practices on Lily Rose Depp. Depp wakes, and she says he's here. While this is happening, not only is Nick Holt riding on horseback to Aaron Taylor Johnson's home and back to his home, you also see the coolest parts of the movie, in my mind, where when you got to see Orlok in his full power on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So between Nicholas Holt, which I guess it signifies a lot of time jump, because if it took 6 weeks by horse, it had to take a couple weeks by sea, right? So,
yeah, and he's not necessarily in the best of health riding that horse either. So
No.
this second journey could very well be
Just
much
as long.
longer.
Yeah.
So, but also, I guess to go back, one of the things that stays true between vampire pop culture and Orlok here is that he can only really live within his every night goes back to his sarcophagus.
yeah.
And so to live and be over in Germany from whatever Slavic country they are,
They
where
didn't
he
necessarily
originates
say.
from, he had to buy the house from
Be invited, essentially.
be invited. So
Yeah.
and so now he owns this house there, and he's of course probably possessed and somehow orchestrated his sarcophagus being moved by ship to this new house, and the servant picks him up from the ship, which the ship, what Ryan was alluding to, was his full power being the whole crew dies. Tragic deaths, whether by plague or by rat or by him feeding. And the last scene you see of the ship, it's like one of those dead ships that floats in with no crew, tattered sails, and we see it later crashed onto the banks and just rats pouring out of it. And they call it a plague ship. And from there, the whole town starts to die from the plague. And
Just
so this is the power of Nosferatu is he brings
crazy.
plague.
Crazy that this dude can just influence sickness.
Yes.
Like he can, and just it's a curse. Like he's the overall moral is that he has power through curse, and whoever's near that curse he can influence, which is just so neat. And so that whole scene, because it's about a 15-minute stretch where it cuts back and forth with him on the ship heading towards wherever their hometown is from, wherever he's from, and just he like you don't realize how big he is until he shows up in the background. So in one of the scenes, my favorite scene in the entire movie, everyone's sick on the boat and everyone knows they're sick. So they realize it's a curse, which is kind of crazy because like captains and like seafarer and pirates back then, they had their sea folklore. So they immediately pin and they're like, this is a curse. There's something on this ship. And one of the members of like one of the crew is like, I'm going to end this.
Oh, he's like one of the final guys.
Yeah. So he goes down. He's like, they tossed a couple bodies off, and the other guy he was with was throwing up, and he's like, I'm going to end this. So he goes down into the bowels of the ship, and he immediately finds the box that supposedly, I would guarantee, had Orlok's sarcophagus in it. It's got his little pentagram thing on the box. He goes up to it, and he's got, what is it, a pickaxe, or he's got something with a sharp
just
edge.
a hatchet.
It's a hatchet, yeah. So he goes up to it and like walking down with his lantern, and you can kind of see in the background, and obviously horror movie, like you're going to see something in the background, but you see Orlok for one frame, and he turns, and just you couldn't even see his head, but you're at the head level of the pirate that is walking towards this box.
Yeah. So you're about your eye level with
a good sized guy,
and then you see in the background that you're like hip level of Orlok.
It maybe chest,
Yeah.
maybe like this dude's tall. And so like, and then the next, like not even like a scene cutaway. It's like the light goes out behind him and it comes back on and he's gone. So it's like, and so he tries to open the box because he, again, pins that the box is the root cause. And as he's trying to open it, Orlok jumps behind him and like bites his neck out or something. Like it was, and like that is like the when you have this mythical power, right? We talk about his ability of possession and influence. We talk about his ability to create a plague. Seeing him be powerful like that, just in physical form, nuts. That's like, I was already sold he was a villainous character. He was kind of scary, right? But seeing him, like, you almost want to be like, okay, where's the proof? Like if someone was to show up with a hatchet and say, hey, I'm going to hand-to-hand combat this thing, is he just going to, oh, you're sick. Here's a bunch of rats. Or is he going to fade into shadows and not physically touch you? To see him like, oh yeah, if you're near this thing.
We didn't even get to see anybody actually attack him anyway.
No.
I don't think it would end very well.
No, like even if you did somehow escape his power of suggestion and you just got him like hand to hand, you were dead. And that like gives a lot of like fear. That for me was like nuts. So that was a really cool scene, and I harped on it way too long, but like I really appreciated that whole section in the ship. It was really neat to see him as wherever his sarcophagus is, he brings that. So that was cool. So anyway,
he arrives. He's there. He's
he gets there right as
Thomas also gets there.
Yes.
So. But he starts spreading his influence. We see his massive shadow of his hand coming out from the mansion. So he starts,
right as
spreading
Nicole
the plague.
gets there,
right
though.
as Nicole gets there,
What happens to Lily Rose Depp?
she becomes okay, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Miraculously.
His love saves her,
Yeah.
and makes you wonder if that's why she tried to get him to stay in the first place.
Yeah, but of course Nosferatu's not too happy with Thomas because that's his woman. They're fighting over the same woman. This is like trailer park drama, I guess. Kinda. But
Yeah.
1823 dramatic trailer park drama.
Yeah.
But the Harding family starts to become, what would you say? They have been attacked.
Very much so.
Very much so.
So Aaron Taylor Johnson, who he describes he hasn't slept in 3 days, is pulled by Willem Dafoe and Ralph Ineson, the doctors and the professor, if you will, pulled away from the home late at night to say, hey, we found essentially, so I guess further backstory, they found the book inside of the original, like the guy that sent Nick Holt, the real estate guy. They found a book with all of the secrets of Orlok, which is supposedly how this guy fell into Orlok's power anyway. But Willem Dafoe reads it and discovers kind of like how they can stop him. And Willem is trying to warn and work with Aaron Taylor Johnson, who it's in his house. This is happening. So Aaron Taylor Johnson is with Willem Dafoe and Ralph Ineson and is like, why are you here? While that's happening, Lily Rose Depp, who she was freaked out and pushed out of her bedroom by Nicholas Hoult, who is like having possession dreams as well. He's still very sick. Lily Rose Depp goes to sleep with Aaron Taylor Johnson's wife, who's played by Emma Corrin. Her name's Anna, after she puts her kids to bed. While they're in the same bed, Lily Rose Depp has a premonition in a dream, or I guess a possession, and argues with Count Orlok about, I never loved you, you're a liar, you just were there for me when I was weak, I love Thomas. And Orlok's like, you have 3 nights, and on the 3rd night, you're going to submit to me. In the meantime, you're going to have the worst, 3 days of your life.
I'm going to start killing people.
Yeah, otherwise. That you care about.
Yeah.
Including Nick Hoult, who's Thomas. She wakes up, and when she looks over, the bed is empty. The only thing in the bed beside her is a cross necklace that Anna would wear. And when she looks on the floor, Anna is being eaten alive by rats.
Yeah, and is fed upon as well.
Yes.
But she's not dead.
By Orlok.
Yes, by Orlok.
Yeah, so she's alive, and at that point, she didn't really believe with what Lily Rose Depp was saying. She called, she would describe, just believe in God, believe in God, believe in God. And so at that point, after that, she says he stunk an unbearable stench of death. He was a shadow. She saw him.
Mm-hmm.
She was attacked, and she starts going crazy. And remember, these plague rats start infecting the entire town. So she's, might be sick. She's going crazy because of what she saw, which was this horrific thing. And Aaron Taylor Johnson is like, this is madness. My wife, oh, by the way, she's pregnant. I don't know if we mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
She is very pregnant.
With his son.
Yeah, she's not very pregnant. And I'm guessing they're assuming it's a son because they've got 2 daughters.
Fair enough.
But either way, my wife is sick and ill and injured because of rats, and she's pregnant, and my daughters are freaked out, and this woman is just crazy, talking about Lily Rose Depp. So they're like, you need to get out of my house. So Nick Hoult is kicked out with Lily Rose Depp, and Willem Dafoe's like, well, how could you do that? We've kind of discovered what we need from them. We need to protect them. And Aaron Taylor Johnson is like, no, you need to leave. And Willem Dafoe's like, Nosferatu has drank the blood of your wife. He's going to come back for the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And Aaron Taylor Johnson's like, whatever. So 2 things are happening simultaneously here. The strangest scene in the entire movie was Lily Rose Depp. She gets possessed again by while in Nick Holt's presence. They're arguing about at first they're talking about what they need to do to get rid of him, and Lily Rose Depp confesses that she in fact was the thing we described at the beginning was she asked for him to show up without meaning to. She confesses that, and then she starts randomly, I think it's because she got possessed, she starts accusing Nick Hoult of abandoning her, of trying to sell her off to Nosferatu, and so on and so forth. And then she starts having a seizure, and right as Nick Holt's like, I'm gonna go get the doctor, she's like, I'll be good. And she says you couldn't love as good as Nosferatu. And then they immediately start to have sex, which was
it was odd.
Why would you do that?
I don't know, man.
Again,
he just needs it. He
needed
it after all that.
He's like, I've been through a lot.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's what happened. But this is another description, another instance of Thomas being stupid. He does things like, why did he get into the carriage? Why didn't he leave earlier? All these things are happening.
Why is he doing his wife? Come on, dude. Who does that?
Yeah, why would you? No, yeah, why? Girl, ew.
Yeah,
no. But
cooties,
she's literally possessed, and she's like, show him how you love me. And then I don't even, he gets a flash image of what he saw earlier.
Yeah, bloody mouth.
Lily Rose Depp.
Yeah.
So he gets thrown off, and she's like, I'm dirty, and he's like, never, I love you. And supposedly that's what makes Nick Hoult feel better, because apparently he just heals up after that.
I guess he just still has a limp, but he's back to his.
He describes that her faith in me and her love in me has healed me, or something like that. And it was just really a one-off line.
All right.
Yeah. So after this, again, Count Orlok we're still on our 3-day timer. That was night 2. We've got one more night. If you've been keeping up, night 1, she was visited.
Yeah. What about the kids?
Oh, yeah. Okay, here we go. So
night 2
comes along.
That's happening over at the Hutter house.
Now at the Harding house.
Now at the Harding house, we start, and this is kind of where Count Orlok's power comes into play. So we start with Aaron Taylor Johnson's Harding. He is sleeping with a flintlock, and we see the shadow of Orlok's hand come over his face, and he says, "You will not
not wake.
Do not wake." And then we hear the screams of the little girls, the 2 little girls, and Joy, right? Joy, Anna.
Yes, Anna.
Tries to wake Harding, and he just won't wake up. I was expecting her to grab the pistol.
He's just
least.
Yeah.
He literally eyes do not open.
Yeah.
and then she goes and goes after the kids after not waking them up, and it's Count Orlok like just sucking the last bit of blood out of one of the kids. The other one's already laying there flat, and he just tosses the other kid on the ground, just limp, lifeless. That was probably the scene that did it for me in terms of the most grotesque is watching the lifeless kid just being, and he's tall, he's massive,
He's
like we
like
talked
8
before.
feet.
So he's crouching underneath the doorway of the balcony and just tosses the lifeless kid to a thud on the ground. And then I guess he attacks the wife
He kills
immediately
her.
after and kills her, and then it goes to black, and then we see this is at the funeral immediately after that,
Yes.
and Aaron Taylor Johnson's character is just destroyed, and he sells it. I mean, he's
Such a good
perfect.
actor. I mean, if we can't describe this enough, or if there's one thing you take away from this review, is every single actor in this film hit it. There was no failed attempt. Every person did everything perfectly. Like, it was so well done. Aaron Taylor Johnson specifically, so good. So right after the funeral, and I'm happy you brought me back to that because that was a grotesque scene. But right after that, they're discussing, like, Willem Dafoe again knows that he reads the book, and essentially, as we described earlier, he knows how to solve the problem. The folklore is you have to do two things at once to kill a Nosferatu, as he describes, or kill a Nosferatu. It's you have to, one, the girl he's seeking, she just got to sacrifice herself up. Like, she's dead.
Yeah,
She just,
straight up has to give herself over.
yeah, to kill the curse, she has to essentially give in to the curse.
Yep.
And while that's happening, you have to destroy the crypt before the first, as they say, the first cock screech or whatever.
Yeah.
Like the first, essentially before morning. You have to kill, or you have to destroy the sarcophagus, and the girl has to sacrifice herself. And that includes like her own free will saying, "I am yours, take me," which is like the whole point. Again, back to vampiric, like the folklore we know, you have to be invited.
Yes.
So Willem Dafoe knows this. He tells that to Lily Rose Depp, and he's like, "Look, you're gonna save us all. Your husband does not. We're making a fake hunt for Orlok." Essentially, what he did was he used Holt, who is again a real estate agent, so he knows the house that he sold. He's like, "I'm using you to find the crypt," knowing that Orlok's not there, but he doesn't tell Nick Holt that. We're going to go on this fake hunt, as he tells Lily Rose Depp, and I'm going to destroy the crypt, and you just got to sacrifice yourself. And Lily Rose Depp knows this. She's kind of come to grips with this sacrifice she's got to make. And so by this point, she's like, "Okay, like I'll do it." And so that happens. That night, they go into the crypt, and it's filled with rats. Just everywhere, rats.
I mean, if you step anywhere in this crypt, the floor's squishy. There's so many rats.
Yeah. So they go at nightfall. Oh, after Aaron Taylor Johnson goes to his wife's grave, he desecrates it, to put it bluntly, but he is sick with the plague. He somehow got sick, probably Count Orlok, might have been bit by a rat. And he lays with his wife, and he dies.
Well, he doesn't just he lays his dead wife.
Yeah.
Like, he's found dead in like
on top of her,
like legs wide open, but they are embraced. Like it's half from the top end. If you didn't see the legs from the top end, they are a happily dead couple.
Yeah.
But from the bottom end, he's
very
definitely
crude.
It's definitely laying his dead wife.
Yeah. It's not like you see it like in detail, but it is obvious.
But it is like that, back to the evil that is Nosferatu. He was not necessarily possessed, but he was driven suggestively to do so. And that just, I mean, it's another, this Nosferatu guy.
That layer of evil. Like, this guy's dying of illness, and Nosferatu won't leave him alone for 2 seconds and makes him desecrate her grave out of grief. So like just the pure evil and just in nature. And so they burn their bodies because obviously he's sick with the plague. And it's so, I think that part was the most depressing for me, not just because he died with his dead wife already of the plague, but they had to destroy their coffins, to destroy their graves after they're innocent, and they got caught. And so anyway, right after that, they go to the coffin, and they open it up, and Nicholas Holt like stabs what he thinks is going to be Orlok, and he stabs the guy that owns the real estate originally, and he dies, and whatever. So as that's happening, Nick Holt's like, "Oh, I know for a fact that you're going to, like, oh, you knew, Willem Dafoe, you knew that my wife had to sacrifice herself." And Willem's like, "It's too late. I'm burning the sarcophagus. I'm destroying the place that he lays, and it's over." And so Nicholas Holt runs back, and as all this is happening, as they're burning the sarcophagus, as Nicholas Holt's running back to his house, Lily Rose Depp has confessed that or has not confessed, has given in to Orlok, lays with Orlok in a wedding gown and everything. And as they're doing the deed, Orlok starts sucking the blood out of her. And to end the film, Nicholas Hoult runs in right as Orlok is dying.
Yeah,
Orlok,
because the sun comes in, like the first crow, the sun comes in the windows and he dies. He doesn't turn to ash like you.
No.
I was
he
thinking it was
bleeds
gonna
from
be. Yeah,
everywhere.
he like Ebola viruses all over the place, bleeding from every orifice, and then right as that happens, I think Ellen breathes her last breath as Nick Holt like holds her hand on the bedside. And Nosferatu is no longer like as large and as powerful. He's like actually a mummified corpse. Like he is
Mhm.
skin and bone, like the very like vacuum sealed bone
Mhm.
bag, pretty much of a corpse laying on top of her. Blood kind of everywhere. So and that's kind of how it ends. I mean, abruptly ends
Yeah.
there.
The final scene, like Willem Dafoe comes in and is like, she had to do it. You
Yeah.
know, like it's the last scene before that you see Defoe, he's kind of in that mad state where he's burning the crypt and he's laughing and he's like, it's too late. And it almost makes you think like, oh man, he's given in to the evil too. And then when he walks back, he's very father figure, very like, son, I'm sorry, but like, this is it. Like
Yeah.
there was no other way.
And I mean, I don't know if we mentioned this. So when the ship crashes, all the rats pour out of it. The whole town is like dying of plague. This isn't just like several people. This is like infirmaries are overwhelmed. People everywhere. People are like laying on the street dead.
Severs,
During
he
this.
can't like he's overrun.
Yeah, no, it's not even like it's not even just hospital. Like you go to town that used to be like a bunch of people everywhere, and actually they had cows in the street. And I was making a point to look. There's no cow crap anywhere. There's no horse crap. Like it's a clean, nice town. And then after Nosferatu gets there, horse crap, cow crap everywhere, dead bodies everywhere, rats. I mean, littering the street, like hundreds of rats. You see them everywhere.
Which back to the attention to detail
Just
that
the
Eggers,
influence.
yeah, that Eggers is like that's just what he brings.
Yeah.
In any of his films, and that, ladies and gentlemen, back to the ending. It ends on Lily Rose Depp, essentially like dead, cradling the body of Bill Skarsgård, Count Orlok, with Nicholas Hoult holding her hand.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe picks up the family cat that has been kind of seen throughout the film. That Nicholas Hoult and Lily Rose Depp had since the beginning, and he looks out the window, and then you see the dead body again, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tragedy. It is a tragedy to the fullest extent, and it feels like a Greek play.
Yeah.
It like, again, back to what we were saying at the beginning. This is a great movie, a great horror movie, but not the best representation of the genre. And it's not, while it's a great Eggers film, it might go down as one of his best. It's not the best to start with. But with that being said, let's get to ratings, Jake. I want you to start first. I'd love to hear what you think this film like stands at least right now.
I don't know. What are we doing? Out of 5, out of 10?
Let's do out of 10.
You do out of 10. For the horror movies, after, I mean, of course, walking through it again, I will give it a decent, like, without saying 7, right? Because everybody wants to say 7.
Yeah.
Artsy fartsy wise, yeah, it's like it's an 8 or 9 for me, because it is told well. And I want to go back to what you said with the how do you use 2 hours to the fullest? Well, that's how you do it. There was not a portion of the story that I was like, why was I told that? It all made sense. And it's not one of those that like every scene has to make sense. Every scene made sense for a reason. Like there was always a point in the fact that that Eggers chose to show that for a reason that furthered the plot. And there's a level of respect I have for movies that do that.
Yeah.
And then other than like I have questions in terms of why there were like some really long drawn out pans, and like I'm all for holding a shot longer than maybe it's supposed to just for emotion, but there were some that was like it was that leading lines, that forest image with the carriage that's coming towards Nicholas Holt's character. We have like a long 180 degree to 0 degrees pan,
Yeah.
all the way from we're looking at Nick and now we're looking where he's looking, but it's a super drawn out pan from half circle all the way back around.
And that's done a couple times.
And it's done several times. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, that's what we're doing in this movie. That's just the thing in this movie. Alrighty.
Yeah. See, I'll give it an 8 as well. I think this film is the closest thing to perfect as you can get. This is right up my alley. I love horror movies, but I love psychological horror better and like mystery. I think that is like if you can scare me and you can add a sense of an air of mystery, especially to a story you probably should already know. Everyone knows about vampires. You might not know how scary they are, but you know about them, right? So the idea that he was able to accomplish that with a story already told to me speaks a lot of high levels. So you have, and like in terms of films, you have some films that are artsy fartsy, right? Like you said, you have films that are like, oh, every other scene can be a screensaver, right? Like you can just screenshot it, make it your screensaver, and it's like, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. However, on the opposite end of that, you have like films that are shot well, but they're just great stories. Like you go out of it and you're like, I might not remember a single shot from that movie, but I lived that story. That is a fantastic story. This is both. You get those screenshot, those like they could be paintings, visuals mixed in with this just mysterious, just evil. It's been a really long time since I've looked at a character and said that guy's just evil. And
yeah, he's pure evil.
Bill
even
Skarsgård's crazy.
Defoe says it. He doesn't even look like, so in It, the clown looks like Skarsgård, and Nosferatu does not look like.
No.
Then that's why I was going into it knowing Skarsgård was playing him and knowing what he looked like in the first one. I was fully expecting a more high cheekbone, more bug-eyed
Pale.
Skarsgård look.
Yeah.
And we got this Nosferatu with a mustache and a lot more Russian, Slavic looking fella. And I was like, whoa. That's why I didn't necessarily know, because I had forgotten that his name was Orlok. So when he was sent to go see Count Orlok at his castle in another country, I had just expected Nosferatu to be introduced later, and that wasn't actually him. But obviously it was. And so I was like, I was just taken aback by the look of Nosferatu in this movie, just because I didn't think it was him. I was fully expecting somebody else, something else, and they went with like full head on into this demonic Russian-esque. I'm not sure what country he went to.
He looks Slavic though.
Yes.
Like very good. That's a very good word. I said Germanic. I think Slavic's a better way to describe his look.
So, and then there's a lot of like transitions, I guess. So I described it as you just gave one of us, a college film guys or fresh out of college, a camera and said, here, be artsy. And they did the long pans, they did the long shots, and then a whole lot of transitions. Like he learned how to do a dip to black transition, and it's used a lot. And then there's sometimes where you think it's going to be used and it's actually just a jump cut to something like really bright. So they dip to black and then it's a jump cut to a really white scene.
Yeah.
I know that happened at least once, and I was like, what in the world? But okay.
I will defend the long pans just a little bit, because for me it added an air of suspense. It's a scary movie. So it's like, for me it's like, oh man, like at any point something's going to jump out at me. Oh man, like I'm uncomfortable. Like that's kind of the goal. So I can understand so I think some of the transitions were a little much. I won't even lie. Like if there's two issues I have with the movie, it's Lily Rose Depp needs to tone down the moaning, because it's just like, it's not even like I have a problem with anything overtly sexual.
He has
it's just
social
a lot.
problems.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it is quite often.
It's not even about because the idea, exactly what you said right at the top, is like Orlok is the embodiment of evil, and a lot of evil has nasty sexual stuff.
Yeah.
So, and that's what he is. But man, she did that too much. The other one is some of the transitions are like, you couldn't have just cut.
Yeah.
We could have had 15 seconds back.
I will argue from how he gets to the castle, from the leading lines, that carriage, I can understand, because he is having these like where he goes off and does something and then he passes out and he wakes up. It's a level of time travel that may, and I'm going to take the liberty and say this is the power of Orlok, is he just makes you forget and you just show up at his castle through various teleportation like transitions, and so it makes you feel like you're actually in that, because you're so discombobulated, I guess is the best word for it. You're right there with the character being like, how the hell did I make it here?
Yeah.
Dude, like I'm just as confused as you are. You got into a carriage and now you're at the front door.
Like Nicholas Hoult might as well have turned to the camera and gave a shoulder shrug.
Which is like, I mean, that makes you feel like you're possessed too. I mean,
it's scary.
You walk away from your consciousness and then you're back, and then it's like, I just woke up in a bed and I was out in the middle of the forest at night and now nobody's in the town.
Yeah.
So, but still, there's a level of you can do that without I guess the cheesy dip to black transitions.
Again, I'm gonna stick with an 8. I don't think I can give it a 9 because it just wasn't like, there were things that could have been improved as we talked about. And a 9 for me is perfect. Like, because no film will ever be a 10. So a 9.
He's like one of our professors when we were in college.
No,
yeah.
They don't say that.
No, I'm not going to name the professor, but there was a professor that only gave 98s on a lot of his stuff.
I hated it. Yeah. No, see, this is like real life stuff though. You know, like this isn't just subjectivity in like a classroom. Like what I mean is that like,
but you're saying the exact same thing.
I know,
he
and
said,
I'm using it to justify.
And like, I got a 98 and I just asked him for fun one day, cause I'm that kind of student. And I'm like, hey man, what's it take to get 100? And he's like, I don't give 100s. And I was like, you think you sound cool here, but
no,
it's kind of like,
I understand, but it's like I can't justify giving anything a 10.
Yeah.
You know, it's like just me personally, unless like it has to be the most perfect film I've ever seen. Like Interstellar comes close. You know, like
Cars 2.
Cars 2 comes.
No, I'm kidding.
No, I'm just kidding. But like a 9.8, right? Like I'll give Interstellar like a 9.7, 9.8, right? I don't like, if there is a film I'll give a 10, you'll be here to hear about it, right? Because like, but like, so it's not even a 9 for me. But it is an 8, like a good 8. And I'm highly suggesting this one. I would rewatch it in a heartbeat, but it need to be a minute because that's dark. It is a tragedy to the most tragic end, and the imagery is very abrasive. You know, like if you're not, I will say like, this is one of those films that it's like, if you are not in the right mental space, like if you're like in a bad spot, it might affect you more.
This is also probably, I mean, the trigger warnings, multiple trigger warnings out the wazoo. You should not watch this if you have...
It's body horror. And then children like being attacked or, sexual triggers in nature. So it'll get you if you have any of those, which we don't. So we showed up and we enjoyed it. But if you can get past those and if you can see it for the art that it is, and like kind of like, especially if you know the folklore, like not even like know the folklore, but like know where it came from and know what Eggers was trying to accomplish, it's a fantastic film.
I think he specifically sought out the falling apart dead body corpse of Nosferatu as a play off of Robert Pattinson's sparkly skin. I think he set out, he specifically made him rotting because vampires aren't supposed to have diamond skin. No, that's just me making a joke. But
this is the skin of a killer, Bella.
Yeah, no, this literally is. And the skin of a rapist.
Gross.
And the skin, like it is nasty. So.
Yeah. Again, everyone did fantastic. I would be shocked if this one didn't get nominated for at least wardrobe, just at the Oscars, I should say, because like everyone was on point. The town was perfect. And, like it felt like we were transported to the time. Which, if you can accomplish that, especially 2024, about to be 2025, and you're in 1823, that's crazy.
200 years.
Yeah. So, good on Robert Eggers. Good on Lily Rose Depp, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Nicholas Hoult, everyone, Bill Skarsgård. Not that you're looking for our approval, but
it was good.
Yep.
Yeah. If you have any movies you'd like us to watch, and if you like us doing these types of reviews or have any, questions, concerns, anything, let us know. Reach out to us, DM, review us, comments.
We're not hard to find.
No. My phone number might be out there. Give me a call.
I hope not. Don't do that.
No. Well, you leave a voicemail. I won't answer it.
Yeah. I don't know you, but okay. Anyway, all the things the man said, and I hope that you enjoyed thus far. If you're listening to this at almost an hour and 10 minutes in, thank you very much.
I love you.
Yeah, we really do. If you're this far in, we really love you. Thank you so much, Jake. Any thoughts? Any final thoughts on Nosferatu?
Number 1, garlic. Number 2, wooden stake. Number 3, never invite somebody in your house that you don't know.
Or sign contracts in a language that you can't
I would
read.
like to say something about the inviting vampires in your house. Floor mats that say welcome count.
Oh.
They count. Do not put those out if you are fearful of vampires.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Well, good thing I have a house. I don't think our mat has a welcome
As
on
long
it.
as it doesn't say something invitational.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So there you
I'm
go.
gonna go to sleep well tonight.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you guys.